Welcome to another edition of AvranceCorp Presents. I'm Kenai Andrews, and we have a great show for you today. Condos have always been a big part of the real estate scene here in the Greater Toronto Area. But where does the condo fit in the conversation today? Well, we're going to try and answer that question in this episode as we have a very special guest here, award-winning realtor and the founder of the Condo Owners Association here in the Greater Toronto Area. We've brought back Linda Pinizzotto is here with us. Linda, thank you so much for coming back on the show. Really loved the conversation that we had the last time. Let's start here with a bit of an overview. Give us the lay of the land in terms of the condo scene here in the Greater Toronto Area and its prominence, its impact. Maybe starting with the last boom that we had here.
Okay, well, the last boom would have been, of course, and by the way, thank you so much for the invitation. I always enjoy having a chat with you and, spreading the love of information, which is really super important. If we're going back to 21, I guess that would be where the boom was. So back in 21, I mean, we ended up in a seller's market. It was not a buyer's market; it was a seller's market, and with so many different international people coming in wanting to buy a condo as an investment. It was really flying at the time as far as prices were concerned. I mean, from 1 minute to 2 weeks later to 4 days later to another week, everything was jumping up and all the prices, continued to escalate. And of course, when the banks were qualifying for mortgages, they would qualify at the time that people were, going in to get pre-qualification. And of course, by the time that they ended up securing a property that they really loved, that they saw themselves living inside, again, it was a change because the prices kept going up and up and up. And so where are we today? It's been a real challenge. I mean, that continued in 2021, 2022. Part of 23 was still somewhat active. The bomb dropped in the latter part of 23, 24, and certainly 25 was an absolute nightmare. But if we go back to that time, whenever you have a seller's market, okay, that's the key right there. So you have more buyers than you have sellers. So if that's the choice, then you're limited with your choices as a buyer. And you're terrified that if you find one that you really, really like, and next thing you know, you can't get that one, and you've got to start searching out again. It's difficult because you almost have to program yourself to forget about the one that you saw that you were really keen on. Maybe you went on multiple offers and didn't secure it. Now you've got to go back to square one, try to find it again. One key point is, though, see, with condos, it's a different type of buying. So maybe we can get into that.
Yeah, I wanted to know, why do people buy condos in the first place? What advantages do they traditionally have, or what is the profile of the person buying the condo over someone, buying a home?
It's all about affordability. You have to start somewhere. I mean, becoming a long-term tenant is just not the smart thing to do. Even I know people can say, Linda, come on, look at the interest rates. I'm going to barely be able to get past spending my monthly payments and my maintenance fees and my taxes and so on. And I'm just going to wait. Well, while they're waiting, the prices typically go up. So they're not gaining any ground. In fact, they're losing money because they're putting out, say they're laying out $2,000 a month for rentals. Next thing you know, that's $24,000 down the drain. So how long do they do that? They do it for 4 years. It goes up $100,000. And, so condominiums are the perfect first step. Now, in relation to people in the downtown core, okay, like downtown core, they're not the first step. They're the first, the second, the third, the fourth. They want the atmosphere of downtown Toronto. They're not looking at suburbia. They're not looking at, maybe getting married, yes, but having kids, possibly not. There's an awful lot of dogs that are in the downtown core, and it's understandable because, your dogs are your babies. I have a baby too. It's a little 5-pound Chihuahua, and she's my love. And, and the thing is that it's all about lifestyle. So if you're going to be renting a condo in downtown Toronto, you need to start considering to purchase a condo in downtown Toronto. Regardless, like right now, the market is low. So you buy low, you sell low, you buy high, you sell high. with stepping into the first time buyer market when it's the lowest market, granted the maybe interest rates are a little higher than you want, but the bottom line is that the prices have gone down substantially.
Right. And in terms of condo-friendly regions here, I know obviously Toronto is a huge part, but are there any other parts of the GTA that are more friendly to condos?
Certainly, Mississauga, your high density condos are definitely going to be Toronto and Mississauga without a doubt, 100%. So those two in particular, there's more development coming into play now in Oakville. They've got a massive project that's coming in at Neagawa in Dundas. And, that's a huge one. So, typically prior to this, there hasn't been a whole lot of development, some of it up and along Upper Middle Road, up along Dundas. But typically your high density condos are certainly going to be downtown Toronto or even uptown, like for instance, Yonge and Sheppard. Okay, I mean,
Right.
there's so many condos being built over there. Yonge and Eglinton would be another one. Tremendously on the hub of that young subway station. So getting around is huge. So you live downtown Toronto. If you don't want to own right immediately downtown, then you go uptown, midtown. If you concentrate on Toronto, Mississauga, we have a tremendous amount at Square One, Highway 10, and that whole strip over there, like Highway 10 and Burnhamthorpe.
Right.
I was actually at City Hall yesterday. I'm
Oh,
very pleased. Cornerstone, yeah, Cornerstone Real Estate. I was actually, I was government relations chair for the real estate board for 8.5 years, actually, vice president. And
oh wow.
that was how I opened the door to all the politicians so that I could move forward with what I've done with the Condo Owners Association. But I was there yesterday because we had a really nice meet and greet to get to speak to the councillors. And I got a great picture of the mayor, too. So yeah, I'll have to share that one with you. She's lovely. I really, really like her. She's very much of a visionary.
Hmm.
Not to change the subject. The only thing I want to mention, she has fantastic plans for the Living Arts Center to bring into a huge city that Mississauga has now become. So
That
yeah,
that would
wait till you
be
hear that. They're
great
tearing
to
it
hear.
down. They're rebuilding it, and it's going to be insanely fantastic. I'm
Okay.
excited. Yeah, we
Yeah.
need venues for entertainment. Yeah.
That would be Bonnie Crombie.
No, I'm not going to say anymore. No,
Okay.
sorry.
Well,
I'll get myself out of that right now. Yeah, this parish
well,
is amazing.
but it is good news to hear things going on in Mississauga, and as you mentioned, Mississauga, one of the condo-friendly regions here in the GTA. So you mentioned also that you were the founder. I also mentioned at the intro that you were the founder of the Condo Owners Association. So
Ontario.
you would be a great source to ask. What's been going on with condos recently? Are there any issues or concerns that are people are talking about?
Can I roll the clock back so people know kind of what
Sure,
it's all about?
absolutely.
Fantastic. So I kind of touched on it a little bit. Back in, if you look back at legislation, so I guess the question is, what exactly is an act? You'd be amazed at how many people don't know what an act is. So what an act is it's the provincial legislation that basically creates the guidelines of how certain things happen and how you can. I'm going to go in layman's terms here. So, for instance, you're speeding, you're driving along the highway, you're speeding, the police pulls you over. What gives them the authority to give you a ticket? The Traffic Act. Accessibility, if you're going into a store and you are, you have some kind of disability and you need to have a better method of getting in, that is going to be basically disability. Okay, so you have a lot of different acts, whether it's the Health and Safety Act. So for instance, if you're running a business and someone's up on the roof and they're not using proper equipment, companies and whatnot can get fined. So the Accessibility Act is a huge one. So basically, what I'm saying is we have hundreds of acts. So in the meantime, the Condo Act had not been looked at since 1998.
Mhm.
In the meantime, if everybody can recall, over there on Blue Jays Way and Front Street, when they decided to build, you had 363, 373, 381, 397, all three of those buildings under Concord ADEX. That was almost the start of an explosion of condos. But the act had not been updated. Property management companies were not licensed. Board of directors had no governance as far as having to take courses to learn a little bit of something. Reserve funds, operating budgets, all of those kind of things. Yes, they followed under the old rules, but 12 years later, from the original act, which was 1998, needed to be updated. So, as a result of all of my advocacy when I was government relations chair for the real estate board, working with CREA, the Canadian Real Estate, the Ontario Real Estate, municipalities, visiting Queen's Park, Parliament Hill, and so on, I was very fortunate because I developed a fabulous relationship with all of our politicians. And I helped them to understand that if condos do not sell and they do not have a good governed body to make sure that it's operating properly and in compliance to the act, which needed massive updates, that we are going to see a problem in the future. Now, no, I don't have a crystal ball in my house. I think a lot. I listen, I learn. I knew, I actually predicted that we were where we are today in a heartbeat. We still need a lot of changes with the act, but technically speaking, the Condo Act now, after numerous changes from 2010 right through to 2026, we do have the licensing, we do have the courses, we do have all the things that are extremely important. So, and the COA, the idea behind it was not to isolate one owner when they have a dispute with their property manager or the board of directors. It was more of a buddy system, because if there's a problem in one building by one owner, I can guarantee you almost that other owners within that corporation have the same problem. Okay,
Right.
so do you put your neck out there and look after your own initiative or problem and complaints and whatnot, and run the risk of being ostracized in the corporation because you got 300 suites in the condos, and how many occupied? 2, 3, 4. I mean, there's a lot of people that may label you as a bad person because you've challenged something. It may not necessarily be true.
Right. You're making me think of the recent situation where they had Mayor Chow revisit I think it was an apartment complex that was really the brunt of a lot of complaints by the owners there. And I think Mayor Chow had pledged that changes would be made, and they just took a look at it again, and the residents are saying that no changes have really been made since the issue was last publicized. So,
Mhm. Yeah, it's a tough one because the difference between a condo apartment versus like right now they're building more purpose built. Purpose builds are rental apartments. So then you've got the war between the tenants of the Landlord Tenant Act and people that are tenanted that feel that, of course, that prices of condos are way too high. They can't afford them. They think their rents are too high. So there's a very much of a disconnect between the ownership world and the rental world. And so what happens is that, in the rental world, it's all about the profits. So they do have ways that they could spend money in the complexes, but then they also have different resources to increase rents. But then they go up against the tenant boards. In condominiums, it's the way the budgets are and the structure and the operations is somewhat different.
so I know we're early in 2026, but are people coming to you looking to buy condos? Have you seen an increase or noticed any trends in terms of buying or selling personally?
I get inundated with calls and I'm going to turn this down so you don't. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm getting messages in because I was out. Um,
maybe that was
I'm
the mayor.
finding that I'm getting, yeah, they're calling, right? Oh, Carolyn Parrish is a sweetheart. She's really nice. She's easy to talk to here in Mississauga. And I know Olivia Chow and I go back many years too, by the way.
Okay.
We stood on a platform together to fight the HST back in the early 20s,
Oh,
2000s. yeah. And I knew Jack Layton very well. So she's doing her best. I know, politicians can never please everybody. And a lot of times you'll have other politicians, like other councillors, arguing what the mayor is doing, arguing within each other. It depends on what their mandate is if they want to try to get elected. When elections come to play. So it's an interest. I've been asked so many times to join the political world. You have no idea. Constantly,
It is an
constantly
election
get
year.
asked. I yeah, I know, but I don't know. You know what? I'm very vocal. I'm outspoken, and I just believe that when you're electing someone, they should be telling the truth and follow the policies that they got elected by. And that's a big one. That's a big comment. um, yeah. So getting back to the condo world, yes, I get people all the time contacting me. I teach them the big things that they have to learn, and that's what I do as a realtor is I go beyond just throwing them in the car, running downtown and run from this condo, that condo, to this condo. You need to understand condominiums. You need to understand the operations of condos, how property maintenance fees are affected, how does the pie look with respect to the breakdown on maintenance fees. So I tend to give the full education because I want my clients to understand what it is that they're buying. Then they can make a proper decision as opposed to just walking into a building, loving the lobby, loving the amenities, walking in the unit. They love it to death, hate the balcony, like the balcony, whatever. I mean, so what is it that you choose in order for you to buy a condo? Well, we go back to old school location, location, location. Okay, that's number one, without a doubt. Then you've got to look at floor plan, see if it works for you. I get it. All that stuff with respect to the interior, sure. Let's do it. Let's look at the floor plan. Let's look at did they finish the flooring? How's the kitchen? Is it this? Is it that? Whatever, whatever. I'm going to throw that out the window right now because what is important is choosing the building. Choose the building. Figure out the building you want to be in. See, condos are cookie cutter. It doesn't really matter whether it's in this building, that building, this building, that building. I mean, they are cookie cutter. Location and which building works for you. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I'm getting the picture.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you were to turn around and take a piece of paper and show you something, I show this to them all the time.
Okay.
That's a condo from years ago.
Right.
Am I going straight? No, this way. Okay, that's a condo. Okay, center hall plan. All the bedrooms have windows. That's a condo from years ago. A lot of frontage, so the land is more expensive. Those are the condos today. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So therefore, you have if you take City Place Concord, okay, their hallways are outrageous. You're buying 520 square foot, and you're getting a hallway already by 50 by 20. To get the front door down to the back side. Okay. And as far as having a front window, you'll get it in the kitchen living room. You're definitely not getting it in the bedroom. You're getting a sliding glass door because that got allowed to bring light in, I guess, unless you put curtains, but whatever. But you're not getting a direct access window from the bedroom out. So depending on what age level the condos are, most condos prior to 2010, they had more of the horizontal style as opposed to the vertical. Nowadays, because of the land, it's less money for builders to buy land to put a condo up like this than it is like this.
Okay. Interesting. And
The sign of the times, right?
it is, but you just reminded me, like, what was the significance of those Marilyn Monroe condos in Mississauga?
Oh my God. I absolutely do not like them at all. I don't like them at all. They have a lot of problems there, man. There's actually a picture out there in one of the magazines for the city of Mississauga with me smack on the front page. That was from a few years ago because I include them there's a video that's on. If people take a look at the COA website, coaontario.com or coatoronto.com, coamississauga.com, either one, they're going to be able to come up to Condo Radio, which is, it has a podcast of mine, and I talk a lot about it. And I actually do talk about those buildings in that podcast. That I'm not. I've never sold one in that complex. I've actually leased one to a very high profile model. She's done extremely well for herself in Paris and everywhere else. I mean, she's done extremely well. And yeah, and that was at the early stages from many years ago.
Okay.
And she enjoyed it there. But as far as owning in there, their maintenance fees are jumping up like crazy. So I'd love to know what's going on. I highly
Right.
suggest that owners pay more attention and go to their board meetings
Hmm.
or their annual general meetings for sure. Yeah. Now the style, I'm not going to hit the style. The style is gorgeous. Marilyn Monroe is an icon. Her legacy has lived on for many, many years. But it's not about that. I mean, they called it that, and it did win a lot of awards and so on. But that's all good. But it's going back to the operations.
Hmm.
You know, the board of directors, the decisions that they're making. How healthy is the budget? You know, have they blown out their maintenance fees and their operating budgets are in a negative and they have a reserve fund that can't sustain the next requirement to fix whatever's slated to be fixed?
Hmm.
Do you see what I mean? So it's more, you know, a lot of people get caught up with the wow factor,
Right.
you know.
And I guess,
Yeah.
that's a good segue into condo fees because that's another indication of some of the things you're talking about.
Well, it is, yes, because you know, affordability. I created the Condo Owners Association. Actually, I came up with the idea at 3 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep. Derek turns around and says, Linda, what are you doing? I'm researching the net and going crazy. And I said, I need to start an association. He's like, oh God. Okay, well, just go back to sleep. Do it tomorrow. I'm like, no. I got up, came downstairs. I started working on it, to put it from concept to reality, you know? And yeah, I think that, you know, the big key with condos is that the general public, and whether you own a condo, I can see people watching this show and saying, "Oh, I don't own a condo. I don't care." And they turn it off. They need to, I'm going to be bold, they need to get it into their head that maybe they don't, but their children might. Maybe they will down the road. Maybe their cousin, their brother, their sister, their next door neighbor, somebody in their life owns one. And if they want to go sell their house and they're in a big $1 million property, say they're $1.5 million property, they need the trade ups. That
Right.
means start a condo, then to maybe maybe a semi-detached to a small detached to a big detached, or maybe they go from a 500 square foot condo to a 1,200 or 1,500. Well, where are those people going to? Do you see what I mean? So when it comes to real estate, you've got to keep an open mind because everything that happens in real estate affects you.
And the community.
Yeah, and the community and absolutely everything. So, and that was one of the big reasons why I saw the deficiencies when I bought my condos, because I own a number of them, and now mine are all furnished, as you know. But at the time that I had tenants, oh man, I've had so many tenants. tenants. I've had tenants since 1985. And yeah, like really. And I'm not talking one or two or three. I'm
Mhm.
talking tenants. And the interesting part is that um, on an investment perspective, yeah, you can refinance your property, have your mortgages comfortable and affordable, take that money and go and buy an investment property. The easiest one to have is a condo because you don't need to be there watching it. It's hard to keep an eye on a house. And you think everyone's trustworthy, but they're not. They close the door of a house, no one's monitoring them or regulating them, nothing. Okay, who knows what's going on in there? But if they're in a condo and you have good security and it's a good condo, now you have an enforcement and protection measure from property management and security, cameras, concierge, you name it, right?
Mhm. Good
You know,
point.
so so if you want to have a hands off and you only want to you don't want to deal with tenants, I hear that as well. Yeah, there are agencies you can have them handle your investment property. You'll not make as much money because of the fees that are attached to it. But yeah, do you see what I mean?
So
Mhm.
condos really aren't like an investment vehicle as they once were, or is that changed, or is it, or what is the state of flux for that?
Okay, the best investment vehicle, without a doubt, if you want it, is a semi-detached.
Okay.
Because if you have a finished basement with a separate access, you rent up, you rent down, and there you go. Okay, but you do risk the problems of the, the the things that need to be repaired. In a condo, it's all divided by all the owners,
Right.
so it's not like you're going to blow out $15,000 on a furnace. So with houses, there's a lot more maintenance, but semi-detaches with a separate side entrance and basement apartments do extremely well. Okay, for affordability, for students, for single persons, for seniors, provided that they're a bungalow and not too many steps. But there are two-story, but then basement's not as large. You get really nice sized basements in bungalows. So you have a duplication. And if it's a raised bungalow, then you have above grade windows. So sometimes it may not feel like a basement. But when you're talking about a condo, they are good investments. It's just that the market right now, we had too much construction. We had too much immigration. Our interest rates took on a massive increase. We also have people that were out of country investors from back in 2000 that, quite frankly, liquidated their condos to pull their money out because they were convinced by other realtors to go brand new build. A lot of that happened, a lot. And they didn't mind taking less because they don't live here. So they just blew it out, took their cash, bought new. They'll deal with it when it gets built. So we had a lot of that, because we had a huge influx of investors coming in 2000, 2001, 2002, back at that time, 2003. And that was a lot actually too. I mean, if you look at the downtown core, the whole city place, that puts you all the way over to Spadina, right? And Fort York, right? And you go all the way down the bend and around, you get down by where the Fleet Street and so on. That was a massive, massive, massive community that's been built in there. hmm So when it's kind of interesting because the media tries to figure this out. They're not realtors,
No.
and then if the realtors try to figure out, they don't pay attention to it because they don't really care. They want to get the next deal. Do you want to buy a house? Do you want to sell a house? That's it.
Yeah. No question.
It drives me crazy because I get them calling me, Linda, could you please give me advice? No.
Now, what are your thoughts on the condos in Vaughan there? I drive by those condos all the time, and I see a lot of cranes there. Some are still building, and
hmm I like that spot.
hmm,
I like that community.
mhm.
We have up in Vaughan, especially going along Highway 7. I actually sold one about 3 months ago. My client did amazing. The buyers originally paid 620. I got it for 485 for my client. Crazy, isn't it? Yeah. But again, remember something, and this is the main. You think, oh my God, they lost all that money. No, they didn't. They're planning on upgrading. They want to buy a house. Sell lower, buy lower. So they sell for less. Did they lose all that money? No, because that money they paid for less when they went and bought their dream home. People need to look at things the proper way, but without education from qualified, experienced realtors, they can't. And I'm talking qualified, not those ones that just joined the markets in the boom. We had an awful lot. Our membership went nuts. Our membership went up to like 85,000, and as a long-term realtor, I love to work with professionals who know the industry. Makes it easier to do the deals. Yeah.
Yeah.
But back to Highway 7 Vaughan. We have, do you remember the days when I grew up at Killen, Eglinton? And
Yeah.
we were predominantly Italian. You go down to St. Clair, George Harvey. I think there was three white guys that, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Three Caucasian Canadians, not Italian background. That's it, like me. Okay, mind you, I'm German background, but most people are Italian. So in other words, 95% of the school was Italian,
Yes.
right? And it was really interesting. And so at the time we had a guy by the name of Barry Mosley. He was actually the only black guy that was on our basketball team. Amazing star. He was so good.
Wow.
Yeah, really, really good. Anyway, my point I'm getting at is that everybody in the community where I grew up, in the houses, were Italian. And when they went to decide to sell and move, where did they move? They moved to Woodbridge. And from Woodbridge, they went to Vaughan. And from Vaughan, some of them went to King City.
Okay.
Now, they're not going to want to change areas. They love their community. They have everything they could possibly want between Bass Pro, the big mall, the this, the that. It's all over the place,
Mm.
right? And they're comfortable because they tend to save money.
Right.
Lifestyle, somewhat of a different lifestyle. So when the time comes that they want to downsize, they don't want to leave the community. They don't want to have the upkeep of a house. Now they have all these condos in Vaughan that's going to be the perfect next step for them. And that's the similar mentality to Lorne Park, where I live in Mississauga. A lot of people have stayed in the neighborhood, and that's why now the builders are like freaking out trying to get into Clarkson and Port Credit. That's where my real estate office is. You see what I mean? So, so not everybody. So when you have communities that are driven, a community of condos that are driven construction to service the neighborhood for the next step of the next decade and the next decade. And that's what I see in Vaughan.
Okay.
Interesting, isn't it?
It's
Now I'm going to get
fascinating.
everybody rushing to Vaughan.
No, it is fascinating because I do make that drive quite often along Highway 7 there, and to see
Oh, yeah.
to see those condos, and some of them, they still have the crane up, and it just makes me wonder, what's going on with them and things like that. But the community as well.
Oh, yeah. And the no and nona, make no mistake about it, they want their grandkids to be close by.
Mhm.
Okay. So, when you look at, it's kind of interesting. A lot of times people don't look at that. When I'm dealing with clients, I always try to get into their life in the first 40 minutes of a conversation. Where do you work? Where are your friends? Where do your parents live? Do your kids go to any particular school? Are you with any church congregation? Do you have to be in a specific neighborhood in order to stay with that? I had a client of mine was Jehovah's Witness. I never knew that if she moved out of the neighborhood, she couldn't stay with that congregation. I did not know that. I had no idea. So I had to keep her in the neighborhood in order for her to keep that going. It was a huge part of her life. So see what I mean? So I could have been gallivanting all over the place, showing her everything under the sun. And meanwhile, I'd have to come right back to that community. So yeah, so as a good realtor, you have to understand your client, and you have to make them feel that you are part of the family, and they can give you all the details they possibly have so that you can find the right fit. And then you won't be selling them anything for the next 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 years, but it's all good. They refer you. Do a good job.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh,
If they're changing 4 houses 3 years in a row, you didn't do a good job.
yeah, they should be there
Yeah.
for a while. All right, Linda, we're almost out of time here. A lot of information here, and again, condo owners
Yeah.
association. Sorry, uh,
Yeah.
Linda is the founder, and the website is coaontario.com for more in-depth news and basically the 411 on condos and things of that nature. Highly recommend that you check out Linda's website. So here we are, Linda, in mid-March, pretty much, um, and we have people here who are, I don't know, they're kind of on the fence, I guess, waiting out the prices that seem to be lowering month by month. What do you see right now in terms of people looking? Are they looking to buy condos now, or are they still people still kind of waiting it out to see how low they go?
People need to start looking. It's not because I'm a realtor. It's because the future tells the writing is on the wall. International investors were stopped in 2025, stopped in 2026. Now the expectation is they will be able to buy into our country in 27. You know, what's really funny is everybody's playing that waiting game. And if the numbers work, stop waiting. You're just losing money every time you continue to keep waiting. And how much more will it fall out? The only reasons it's falling out is because the specific condos that are in financial difficulty are in a position where they don't have a choice. The owners that have a choice hang out, wait. Real estate always returns. You don't lose money. What you do is you move ahead, you get into home ownership, and manage your finances properly. and start adding the coins of the money you will be making as times start to change, because it always does. Always. I've been experienced that for like 40 years plus. So are the prices going to continue to drop? I don't think so. I think that, we've even had tenants, rentals dropping because of the same thing. And yes, we have a confusion, but if somebody has good income, they feel that they have a sustainable job, they have the money sitting in the bank getting you next to nothing in interest. Like really take a look at how much interest you're making on your money. Get moving, you know, um, because the longer you wait, we can't predict the future. So if you're waiting because you figure that the whole thing is going to drop more, think about how much it has dropped. And the people that don't need to sell, they just won't sell. So who's in charge when that happens?
That's a good point. Uh,
Yeah.
Once again, Linda, thank you so much. Really food for thought here for a lot of people. Looking at the market, wondering what to do. Thank you so much for coming on. We're out of time here. Let's bring you back on really soon and tackle
Love,
another part.
absolutely. Love hanging out and having this conversation today. So thank you. Have a wonderful day. Okay.
You
Thanks,
too,
Kanal.
Linda. Always great.
Okay.
Well, there she
Okay.
goes, Linda Pinizzotto, award-winning realtor, and again, founder of the Condo Owners Association. So I really recommend taking a good look at the website here. Let me put it back on here for those who might have missed it. Um, Again, the Condo Owners Association, COAOntario.com. Plenty of information from so many different aspects of the condo market. She's got various videos on distressed home sales surge. Herself talking about the condos, and then also links uh, to other organizations related to condos. Just a really great source, a resource of information. The Condo Owners Association website. All right. So that will do it for this edition of AvranceCorp Presents. I'm Kanai Andrews. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you right back here in the next episode on the AvranceCorp YouTube channel. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.